Conspicuously situated on a promontory overlooking the St. Lawrence River, stands the quaint city of Quebec, a citadel of history, chivalry, culture, and romance, where heroic Frenchmen, such as Cartier, Frontenac, Champlain, and Montcalm, founded and built New France in North America. The majestic building on top of the promontory is the famous Chateau Frontenac, patterned after a 16th century chateau, and operated as a modern and progressive 20th century hotel. The port of Quebec, with 6 miles of deep water frontage and one of the world's largest dry docks, now handles about 2 million tons of commodities annually. But our interest is in the scenes of old Quebec, such as the native market, where business is conducted very much as it was in the days when the coins exchanged bore the inscriptions of the French kings. Quebec entertains over 1 million tourists each year, and sightseeing is at its best when riding in a calèche. This grand fortress reminds us that Quebec is the only walled city in North America. About 9 miles from here, we behold Montmorency Falls, 100 feet higher than the Great Cataract of Niagara. This little elevator car provides transportation from the falls to the historically renowned Kent House, which was once owned and inhabited by the father of Queen Victoria, the Duke of Kent. It is now one of Quebec's most famous inns. En route to the shrine of Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupré, we pause to admire typical scenes along the way. The art of hook rug making in Quebec has been handed down from generation to generation, and some of the patterns used are so old that their origin has been lost in tradition. Most of the products sold are woven or spun on old-fashioned spinning wheels, which are still in common use. A delightful aroma of freshly baked bread permeates the air as these loaves are removed from the crude bake oven, designed centuries ago by the early French settlers. And now we arrive at the sacred shrine of Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupré, which is visited annually by almost 1 million pilgrims and has come to be known as the Lourdes of America. About 3 centuries ago, some French sailors constructed a crude chapel here in honor of St. Anne, whom they believed saved them from shipwreck. Soon after the construction of the little chapel, miracles became associated with it, and eventually it began to attract the attention of the Christian world. The present modern construction is a splendid tribute to the memory of the devout sailors who were responsible for the founding of one of the most sacred shrines in the history of Christendom. On the Isle of Orleans, not far from Quebec, the pursuits of agriculture are still the mainstay of the native population, which is decidedly French. In fact, the English language is so foreign here that we required an interpreter to translate for us. And here is a colorful example of one man's idea of home sweet home on the Isle of Orleans. About 70 miles north of Montreal in the famed Laurentian Hills, we visit Sainte-Adèle Lodge, which is typical of Quebec's many fine year-round resorts. We are fortunate to be here in time to witness some fancy diving by the champions of Quebec. But let's not be so serious about all this, especially when we have a troupe of highfalutin clowns waiting to perform for us. Come on, boys, bring on your act. Continuing the more serious business of sightseeing, we arrive at Mont Royal, from which the city of Montreal derives its name. It is customary to ride up to the summit of Mont Royal in a horse-drawn vehicle for an impressive panoramic view of the largest city in Canada and the third largest French-speaking city in the world, Montreal. This grand metropolis encompasses historic relics of the early French regime, famous old churches and homes, contrasting with modern office buildings, hotels, smart shops, and theaters. It is also the seat of McGill University and the University of Montreal. Although Montreal is 800 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, it is the second largest seaport in North America, and it is from this port that we now embark on the good ship Tadoussac for a cruise down the St. Lawrence and into the Saguenay River. Perhaps there is no more delightful 6-day boat trip in all the world than this one. For aside from scenic grandeur, it takes us through the St. Lawrence Valley, about which historians have written volumes, and it leads us into the ancient Saguenay fjords, where red men and white men conducted a flourishing business with each other long before the Pilgrims set foot on Plymouth Rock. With the cities of Montreal and Quebec behind us, we are now in the wide open expanses of the St. Lawrence, enjoying beautiful vistas of land, water, and sky. At Murray Bay, we stop for a brief visit to the famous Manoir Richelieu, which is open to tourists from June to October. We are overwhelmed at the pretentiousness of this secluded hostelry, so far from the madding crowd, yet ultra-modern in its appointments and conveniences. After a brief stop at the Manoir Richelieu, we continue our journey down the St. Lawrence in the direction of Tadoussac. Our ship has now become a floating home, and the spirit of comradeship is in full sway. In reviewing the history of the St. Lawrence Valley, we recall the great part that was played in its development by the French missionaries. And here we meet two of their followers, who are members of a very strict and somewhat remote order of the Catholic Church. Handshaking gets a little confusing at times, but after the formalities of introduction are over, we find these odd-looking gentlemen of the cloth to be most interesting and quite friendly. In 1615, a Franciscan friar established a mission here at Tadoussac, and for about 50 years thereafter, it was the center of all civilized activity in Canada. The little church on the right was founded in 1747 by the Jesuits, and the impressive building next to the church is the new Tadoussac Hotel, a popular resort for summer vacationists. Now we have come to the junction of the St. Lawrence and Saguenay Rivers, and in the hour of twilight, as the Union Jack goes down with the sun, our good ship rounds the promontory and enters the Saguenay. It takes about 6 hours to sail from the mouth to its source in Lake St. John near the port of Bagotville. En route, we are enthralled with the scenes that loom up on every side, reminding us somewhat of the Norwegian fjords. About 40 miles upstream, Capes Trinity and Eternity rise sheer from the water, 500 feet higher than the world's tallest building. Aside from scenic grandeur, we are told that the Saguenay River is the habitat of the world's finest salmon. We arrive after dark at Bagotville and leave early the next morning on our return journey. The downstream wind is so strong that it blows the smoke from our boat in an odd direction as we slow down to get a better view of the famous Madonna of the Saguenay, standing like a sentinel on Cape Trinity. And it is here in the beautiful valley of the Saguenay that we most reluctantly say farewell to Quebec.